This is the second part of an article in the Reformed Presbyterian, Volume 2, published in May 1838. The article is entitled Declaration of the Principles of the Reformed Presbyterian Synod in Ireland on the subject of civil government. Number 10. The law of nature binds the civil ruler to guard the honor of the divine being and to check all open disregard of religious as well as moral obligation. And as a Christian magistrate ruling over a nation that has embraced revealed religion and embodied in its constitution the laws of God in both tables, as in duty bound and solemnly dedicated itself to God, and engaged to maintain the doctrines and ordinances of Christianity, he is further obliged by the revealed will of God, his own religious profession, his solemn covenant, and oath of office, to employ his power and influence for the suppression of ungodliness and vice, and the advancement of truth, piety, and virtue. Number 11. As the principles laid down are opposed to Erastian supremacy, they are also repugnant to sectarian license and Romish intolerance. Persecuting or intolerant principles ought to be utterly condemned, and for ourselves, our reforming fathers, and subordinate standards are distinctly, solemnly, and indignantly disclaimed. True it is that intolerance and sanguinary principles have been indiscriminately imputed to those who powerfully contended and valiantly laid down their lives for those very liberties which are abused to revile their memories. But all exercise of civil authority about religion is not to be condemned. Just provision for the defense of the Protestant religion and liberty, especially in critical circumstances and dangerous emergencies, must not be stigmatized as intolerance and persecution. Nor are the standards to be left, and no sincere adherent to them would leave them under a vague, injurious allegation, which every enemy may turn against them as it pleases him. Number 12. Civil rulers or nations as such are to refrain from and totally prevent persecution, which may consist in punishing persons whose guilt has not been proved, or in punishing the guilty with undue severity. But persecution chiefly consists in injuring men in their person, privileges, property, or character for their adherence to the doctrines, ordinances, and commandments of God. The exclusion of men of evil principles from places of power and trust is ordinarily all the length to which civil power should go. Simple forbearance should be extended to such persons who are otherwise inoffensive members of society, as also the protection of those rights that are common to men, while they do not, in propagation of their principles, offend openly against the laws of God and of society, and thus threaten the subversion of the one and the other. The civil restraint of those who, in propagating their erroneous sentiments, openly transgress the law of God and the laws of society founded upon it, is not intolerance. The just authoritative restraint of an obstinate and contemptuous blasphemer is not contrary to any right which conscience really possesses, or has derived from God. And it is an error to maintain that the repression of gross outward public acts of idolatry is persecution. Number 13. The rights of a good conscience are not to be confounded with the claims of an evil one, nor are the pleas of conscience and private judgment to be admitted to the injury of any divinely instituted and constituted authority. To resist the lawful exercise of lawful authority under pretense of liberty of conscience is to set the authority of God in opposition to itself. For all the rights of man are derived from God. Are of course subject to his law, and are to be defined and regulated by it. And God does not and cannot give, nor is it competent to any power to impart and sanction a right which is in opposition to the divine law. It is no more a man's right to worship an idol or to blaspheme the name of God than to kill or steal, although he may judge it proper to do all these things. Number 14. Sentiments declared in opposition to the righteous terms on which a society is founded, it is well known, exclude from its privileges, and this principle admits of obvious application to the exercise of civil authority in restraining overt transgressions of the law of God. And open immorality, in direct violation of the law of God, as embodied in the civil constitution, the magistrate may restrain or punish as a crime, not only for the sake of society, but on the ground of that subjection which civil society as such owes to God. The honor of God and the good of society require that principles and practices should be restrained which are injurious to society and subversive of it. and such are those principles which are plainly in opposition to the moral law and subversive to the moral government of God. The interests of man and the divine glory are essentially connected with one another, and the latter has, in all cases, a necessary precedence. Civil society owes it both to God and to itself to define the rights of individuals and of the community in agreeableness to the divine law, and to defend the rights of both from gross invasion under whatever imposing pretense it may be made. Number 15. Authoritative restraint of the open violation of the first, second, or any other commandment of God is not persecution. For as no man has a right to violate the divine law, no right is invaded, and there can be no valid objection to the judge, who is first the divine lawgiver himself, and secondly, the nation recognizing his law, embodying it in the civil constitution, and empowering the representatives to carry it into effect. Number 16. In parts of the world enjoying revelation, when a people, in framing their civil constitutions and appointing their magistrates, overlooked, reject, or relinquish the Scriptures as the supreme standard, enact laws inimical to the kingdom of Christ, and favor the interests of Antichrist, the constitutions and authorities becoming thus immoral and anti-Christian cannot be innocently recognized. In this case, the Christian, having entered his protest and continuing to testify against authority so constituted and administered, still regarding the ordinance of God as it is delivered in the Scriptures, will conscientiously perform things moral and just, and promote the peace and good order of society. To imposts even of an oppressive nature, if not exacted expressly for an immoral purpose, nor required as a pledge of subjection to authority, Christians may submit for wrath's sake. But they cannot swear allegiance to, nor recognize as the moral ordinance of God for good, authority that is immoral and anti-Christian. Number 17. Christians living in peace and in their private capacity, furthering the ends of civil government and good order, while they do not incorporate with the national society, and are submitting to certain disabilities and privations on this account, are, nevertheless, entitled to protection in their lives, property, and liberty, having contributed their proportion of the common taxations. They may live within the limits of soil, and enjoy the protection of strangers within the gates, without being incorporated with the national society, or involved in the guilt that may attach to its constitution or administration. Number 18. The Scripture doctrine of magistracy belongs to the Christian's daily duty, and is necessary to furnish the mind with proper principles and ends in the discharge of it. It is intimately connected with the divine glory, the administration of Messiah, the good of Zion, and the happiness of man. Some parts of it, too, have to faithful martyrs been grounds of suffering, and have been sealed for their blood. In conclusion, it is not for any particular form, according to which civil government may be modeled, that we contend, but for the moral and scriptural principles upon which it should be based.